Hi, it's Miriam at Accepted. I'd like to welcome everyone to Linda Abraham's virtual MBA office hours. Once again, out of all the feedback that we've received post-event, this is definitely our biggest request. More time for questions. So we've set aside an entire session just for you. I also want to introduce Linda Abraham, the founder of Accepted, who will be responding to your questions today. Accepted was founded in 1994 and today is a premier international MBA admissions consultancy. We've guided thousands of applicants from all corners of the globe to acceptance at top MBA programs. Linda is also the author of the best-selling MBA Admission for Smarties, which she'll be telling you a bit about later during the webinar. A quick word about our format for those of you who have not joined us during prior webinars. We'll be using a moderated Q&A format today. You can post your questions in the question window at the bottom of your dashboard, and we'll be choosing the questions that have the broadest application. You can listen to Linda's answers the same way that you're hearing me speak right now. So without further ado, Linda Abraham.
Thank you very much, Miriam. I want to thank you all for joining us. I don't know. First of all, I'd like, actually, rather than show of hands, I'd like you to, in your question window, just post where are you geographically located. Okay? If city and state, city and country. In the question window. Los Angeles, neighbor, okay, Mumbai, Montreal, New York, D.C. Good, so pretty good geographic diversity here. Anybody else want to let me know? I guess not. Okay, so all right, well, welcome everybody. For the Americans here, I assume you're all shopped out, returned out, and another somebody else from India. Wonderful. Welcome. And ready to focus on your applications, which you've also probably been spending a lot of time on as the round 2 deadlines are looming. How many of you here, if you could just do it with a show of hands, and that means clicking on the hand icon on your dashboard, indicate how many of you are planning to submit an application round 2? A little bit more. Anybody else want to respond? How many of you are planning to submit an application round 2? Please click on the hand on your dashboard. You just have to click once, because some of you are clicking twice. All right, well, we're up about 40%, 50%. I actually suspect it's higher. But anyways, okay. Great. Let's get started here. A few weeks ago, we asked you, MBA applicants, for the questions that you would like to see addressed during this event. You were very generous in your responses, actually fantastic. And after reading every single one of your responses, Miriam and I culled a list from the long list of the most popular topics. And in the interest of time, we're going to start with the 3 questions that seem to come up the most. So, Miriam, you want to pose the first one?
Sure.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, okay.
Excellent. Okay. Great. So here's a question that this came up in many different formats, but do you have any tips on selecting references?
Sure. There are 2 tips, and they both have to be true. Be able to answer yes to both of them, or your recommender should be able to answer yes to both of them. Does the recommender know you well, not just in terms of a family acquaintance for decades who knew you when you were a baby? I mean, in a professional context or in a responsibility context where you were taking responsibility, let's say in a volunteer context. That your recommender has to be able to answer yes to that. Most cases, you want a supervisor, somebody who supervises you either on the job or in a serious volunteer commitment, but somebody who can comment on your ability to lead, to manage, to organize, etc. That's criteria number 1. Criteria number 2, is the person willing to spend the time to write a strong, positive letter of recommendation for you? That is the second criteria. And I see that Anushri is asking a very common question. My recommender asked me to write my own. Is that okay? Certainly the schools would say no, that is not okay. It's a very common request, and it's a very common dilemma that applicants have. I'm not talking about recommendation forgeries. I'm talking about recommenders who say, you write it, you draft it for me, I'll edit it, I'll tweak it, I'll sign it, but that's how I want to help you. It's not okay for two reasons. One, again, the schools don't like it. They frequently can tell from the writing style that you've written it. Not always, but it can happen. And two, what they're really looking for in the recommendation is a different perspective on your candidacy. And obviously, if you draft a letter of recommendation for your recommender's signature, it's pretty hard to provide that other perspective. So it's not really okay, and that's again why the second criteria is the recommender's willingness to write a strong recommendation on your behalf.
Excellent.
Next
Thank
question.
you. Yeah, great. Thank you, Linda.
You can also post questions, by the way. Okay.
Great. So here's another one, and I'm sure that a lot of people have this question. I'm sure you've heard it many times as well. But in your assessment, how truly holistic is the admissions process? Is it true that even though it's denied in public, a lower GMAT score could mean hauling up a further review of the application?
All right. I believe genuinely that the application process, the review process, is truly holistic. And you do see people with very low GMAT scores getting accepted. So there's some schools, with much, much higher GMAT scores, and with very low GPAs getting much higher GPA. And the same with levels of work experience. So it is clearly holistic. At the same time, I think it would be naive to say that if you apply to a school with a GMAT score, let's say 50 or 100 points below the school's average, your application is going to be reviewed with the same thoroughness or perhaps the same enthusiasm or the same open-mindedness as somebody where, the first thing that pops out is a nice high GMAT score. So is it holistic? Yes, it's holistic. Is a low GMAT score, let's say 50 points below the school's average, a hurdle, a negative? Yes, both are true. And I think it's important in this process to be to be realistic about your chances in this assessment. It's okay to have a dream school and maybe even not be so competitive at your dream school in terms of your numbers. But all your schools should not be dream schools if you really want to get accepted. That's where the realism comes in. Next question.
Got it. Thanks, Linda. Okay. The next question that we have, and I guess this is this applicant's personal example, but I'm sure it applies to a lot of people as well. So this applicant asked, if I work for a large but non-blue chip company in China, but do have lots of high-level responsibilities, such as negotiating M&As, will I be disadvantaged as compared to candidates from brand name firms like, for example, McKinsey?
Okay, that's a really, really good question. It's not so much that you're disadvantaged, it's that you have a slightly higher educational challenge. McKinsey, the schools know, and McKinsey is a known brand. McKinsey has a certain credibility also in terms of post-MBA employment. On the other hand, if you've done all this fantastic work and handled all this responsibility, you too are a desirable candidate. You just have, the educational challenge comes in that you have to inform the schools of what you've done and what you've accomplished and the responsibility you've been entrusted with. And that can be just as impressive as coming from McKinsey. So are you out of the running? Absolutely not. Are you, again, I don't like to use the word disadvantaged. You have a certain challenge that the McKinsey applicant doesn't have. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, definitely. And I assume your answer would hold the same.
All right. So.
Yeah, and I assume it would be the same. Anil also asked, what if you're from a competitive pool, such as India? So I'm not sure if that was in regard to that specific question, but I think in other words, it's a similar idea.
Well, that's actually a different issue in my mind, because you could, it's a different issue. In the sense that the problem is different, but the solution may just be the same. And in that respect, Miriam, you're 100% right. The solution for somebody coming from a competitive pool such as India, Anil, is to show that you have something distinctive and unique to contribute, even though you are from that pool. And in that respect, Miriam's 100% right that the solution is the same. So if you focus on everything that you have in common with most Indian applicants, then you will blend into the pool of Indian applicants. But if you can highlight achievements, if you can highlight distinctive aspects of your background, then with a certain degree of specificity, so that you're no longer just an Indian applicant, but Anil, who has done X, Y, and Z and achieved on an unusual level, unusually high level, then suddenly you're not competing against all other Indian applicants. You have really created a pool of one, and that's you. And that is, by the way, the goal of every single applicant applying to business school.
Excellent.
Okay, now I know Miriam prepared several questions. You're welcome. And you are all welcome to post questions in the question window. Miriam, I think you have some more questions too, because we while they're posting, we can.
Yes, and we definitely have a lot of questions. Anushri asks, I'm interested in doing an MBA in Europe. Could you please talk a little bit about the top 3 schools' admissions requirements?
Okay, I can talk a little bit about it. I mean, I think the best place in terms of a high-level view of the admissions requirements for these schools, and I would say the top 3 in Europe are London Business School, INSEAD, and IMD. You might argue about the number 3 there, but I think the top 2 are pretty much universally agreed to be IMD and INSEAD. LBS and INSEAD. I think the key difference between European schools and American schools is that European schools will put a lot more emphasis on multicultural fluency. American schools certainly appreciate it, but they don't emphasize it as much as the European schools. Obviously, INSEAD also has language requirements. I don't remember off the top of my head if IMD does. I think that is a key difference between the top European schools and American schools. Another key difference is that European schools, the student body tends to be a little bit older than the American schools. So if you're in your early 30s, that may be 31, 32. At some American schools, that makes you an older applicant. In European schools, and the 3 European schools that I'm talking about, certainly IMD, it puts you right in there in terms of their average level of experience. Another key difference, and this is not so much admissions requirements, but it does make a difference in the program. Well, obviously that would also imply that they want more experience. But the key difference for both INSEAD and IMD is that they are 1-year programs. LBS has a 15-month option, but most applicants choose to go for the full 2 years over 21 months. But that is something that is much less common in the United States, that shortened time frame. That also implies that you have to have a very, I think even clearer than in the United States, you have to have a very clear idea of what you want to do with the degree after you complete the MBA. And the schools will put much more emphasis on a specific career goal, a realistic specific career goal. Anyway, you're very welcome. Okay, let's see, what should we do?
Great. Well, Sally has a really interesting question. She asks, in the Harvard and Stanford applications, it asks you to list the top accomplishments as part of the online application. But wouldn't this be repeating what you've already listed in the resume? What are they looking for here?
They're looking to see what you consider your top accomplishments. And they probably also want to know a little bit why you consider it your top accomplishments. I did deal with this more, by the way, in both the Harvard and Stanford webinars that I gave. The resume, if you're asked to list what are your top 3 accomplishments in your life, they may or may not show up on the resume. Because the resume you'll be talking about what were your top accomplishments on a specific job. And they're asking for more context than you could provide in a bullet point. So there might be some interpersonal challenges that you face that would not show up on a bullet point. They're looking to see what you value. Did I answer your question, Sally?
I think that was a great answer, Linda. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
But I'm already part of your fan club, so I guess.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, Pranav has a question, and I think I know your answer, but I'm gonna ask it. And he asks, while talking about your short and long-term goals, should you keep it more generic or more specific?
I'm really glad you picked that question, Miriam. Thank you, Pranav. It's an excellent question also. The short-term goal should be specific, and by specific I mean it should include function, what you actually want to do after your MBA, and industry. What industry do you want to do it in? If geography is important to you, for example, if you want to work in emerging markets, or you want to work in India, or you want to work in the United States, or Wall Street, or the City of London, whatever it is, if that's an important element to you, you can include it. If it's not important, you don't have to. So the short-term goal, again, is specific. It should include industry and function. Your long-term goal can be fuzzier, because in general it's hard to predict what you want to do long-term. If you know what you want to do long-term, let's say you're trying to switch, you're currently in product development in the technology industry, and ultimately you want to go into private equity. You may say that your short-term goal is to go into investment banking with technology focus, and your long-term goal is to go into private equity, in which case you would be, I guess you could potentially be staying in the same industry, or you'd be ultimately switching function, but not industry focus, and ultimately branching out. And your short-term goal is very specific. Your long-term goal, again, is a little bit fuzzier.
Got it. Thanks. Linda, Kedar has an interesting question. He asks, if I've been in a similar role at work for many years, that is, haven't moved up the ladder, does that work against me?
That does work against you. Unless, hold on, let me go back. If your title has remained the same, it's not that much of a problem as long as your responsibilities have increased. If your responsibilities have basically been pretty much the same for the last X years, and there's been no growth in responsibilities, that is a weakness in the MBA application process. What you ideally want is increasing title and increasing responsibilities. If you have increasing responsibility and pretty much the same title, not that big a deal. If you have pretty much the same responsibilities, whether with or without changing title, that's a problem. It's a weakness.
Got it. So actually we have a question here from Srijiot, and he had said that he is the average Indian IT male, average GMAT, average GPA, but he has taken some different diverse courses. He's learned some French, volunteered with Teach for India, doing an unofficial course in medicine, like basic life support. In other words, definitely different, not trying to, I guess, to differentiate himself. So would that help him in his application? Would there be something else that he could do to make his application more diverse?
Okay. When I talk about diverse, what you really want to do is show that you have made a difference, that you've had impact on the organizations that you've been a part of. Being a card-carrying member of any organization is nice. Participating in events is nice, but it's not demonstrating the leadership that schools value and that will really, really set you apart. So if you took a leadership role in Teach for India, even as you were volunteering, that would be impressive. That would set you apart. If you first learned French and then traveled through, I don't know, French Africa or something, that would set you apart. Or participated in some kind of, I don't know, community service activity where you volunteered and, to help the poor in some French African former colony. I'm making this up. If you took a course in basic life support and ended up being an emergency medical technician and delivering babies or saving people's lives, again, that is something where you've taken responsibility. Taking a course, enrolling in a course, shows that you have different interests. It's certainly fine. It's not, in my view, going to be a really impressive kind of differentiator because there's no real impact on others there.
Got it. Well, Shrikant asks a question. He asks, I have my own chartered accountancy firm from a small town in India. Is that competitive work experience for HBS or LBS?
Okay, again, it's going to sound a little bit repetitive. It's really going to depend on what you have accomplished with your small firm. As somebody else alluded, you're going to be, earlier, you're going to be competing against, you're very welcome, Srijat. You're going to be competing against people who have worked in leading investment banks, who have worked on mergers and acquisitions worth billions upon billions of dollars. You're going to be competing against people who have started startups, I don't know, done all kinds of things, fascinating things, management consultants from McKinsey. So the question is going to be, what difference has your chartered accounting firm made in your town? Where have you made a difference? Have you shown the kind of initiative, assumption of responsibility, and leadership that Harvard or London Business School values? And again, with London, I would also add the requirement for at least some level of multicultural and international fluency. Again, and again, I want to emphasize, it's not that the U.S. schools don't care about that. They definitely do. But I think for the European schools, it's something that they emphasize just a little bit more.
Right, definitely. Now, Linda, here's a question that I'm sure is on, well, it should be on every single applicant's mind. And Jerry asks, what are the admissions committee looking for in your essays?
Okay, that is something that should be on everybody's mind, certainly if you're working with round 2 applications. They were looking for 3 things. And you can remember the 3 things. I call it PAD, not padding, PAD. The P stands for provide a window into the real you. They're trying to meet you through your essays. So that implies that they want to hear your voice, obviously the best of you. Okay, nobody wants to introduce yourself as a grump, the grumpy before coffee, first thing in the morning you, but the happy, accomplished you. That's part of it. So provide a window into the real you. And that's the P. The A is add value to the rest of your application. What do I mean by that? You don't want to just be repeating what's on your resume, what's in your activity history. You certainly don't want to be repeating your GMAT score. They know that. What you want to be doing is telling them about events and experiences that either you didn't mention at all in the other parts of the application but are significant and answer their questions well, or provide context for significant achievements that you did mention in the boxes but couldn't go into any depth and any detail. You couldn't show them the challenges you faced as you achieved. You couldn't show them perhaps your background that you've overcome. Any of those things that you couldn't list in the boxes would be good material to provide in the essays. So that's the A in PAD. And D is demonstrate your writing and communications ability. Communications is a critical quality for managers and leaders. And they want to be able to know that you can communicate. In addition, they want to be able to know that you can handle the work. I notice that some of the people here are not native English speakers, and the schools want to know that you'll be able to understand the lectures, respond to questions orally, and of course write papers and exams. So that would be the D in PAD. So again, the purpose of the essays, and when you are checking your essays, you should really, really make sure that they accomplish all 3 goals. Provide a window into the real you, add value to the other information that they already have, and demonstrate your writing and communications ability.
Great. Thank you, Linda.
And you can post questions, by the way, in the question window. Yeah.
Yes, excellent. Well, Krishna asked a question. I know that in the beginning, a lot of the people here, or at least half, said that they're applying for round 2. But Krishna wanted to know, what are your thoughts about applying in round 3? Krishna had asked specifically in regard to Cornell, but I would even just take that question a bit further, Linda. Like, what is your, what are your general thoughts about applying the differences between round one, round two, round three, and then specifically as Krishna asked for in regard to Cornell, if you do happen to know?
Okay. For most schools do have a three-round application cycle, round one, round two, round three. Round one is usually in September, October. Round two is usually in January. And round three is usually March or April. Some have 2 rounds, some have 4 rounds, one has rolling admissions, but this is certainly the most common calendar. In general, whenever I've talked to admissions officers, almost all say round one and round two are pretty much the same in terms of competitiveness and difficulty or ease of getting into a given school. And they will almost all say that round three is more difficult. The acceptance rate goes down. My personal opinion is that people admitted round three usually are super competitive at the particular programs where they are applied to in some way or another, or for the top programs where basically most people are competitive and many people rejected are competitive and qualified. I think the schools use round three to increase the diversity of their classes or to ensure the diversity of their classes. And they really are for the exceptional applicants. Regarding Cornell, I have no evidence or no knowledge that Cornell is any different. So if I were to, let's lay out a situation now. You're looking at your qualifications and you think, gee, my GMAT's too low or my GPA is too low. I really should take some classes or pass a CFA exam or do something to beef up my credentials. Otherwise, let's deal with the easy one. Your GMAT's low and you want to retake it because you think you can raise it. Should you apply round two or round three? Well, if you don't feel your GMAT is competitive and you think it can be easily raised, then I would you can either apply with the current score and just see if you get in. If you get in, great. If not, you reapply next fall. That's one approach. Number three is you can retake the GMAT and apply round three. I would try that route if you have some real diversity elements to your profile. If you are from an overrepresented group, I would probably not try that approach. We do have an article on the blog, Should I Apply Round 3, I think is the title. Mary, maybe you can look up the URL and provide it. And there I lay out who should apply Round 3 and who shouldn't. If you are in the situation where you really, really want to go to B school in September and you want to increase the chances of doing that, and you also feel that your GMAT is low enough where it really is just zapping your chances, then I probably would wait and apply round 3. And again, I don't know, and I think this is true of Cornell as of most top 15 schools. Now let's look at what other questions we have here.
Yes, Linda, we definitely have some more questions here.
Yeah.
Pranav asked another question actually about the leadership example in the essay. He asked, some of the essay questions talk about one leadership example or a challenging work situation. If I talk about examples examples which are about 3 years old, not from his current job, does it look bad, or is it better to use more recent examples? Does it make it seem as if he doesn't have any recent experiences, anything significant in the last 3 years?
Right. That is another very good question. I'm glad you're here. You're raising a good question. Some schools specify, first of all, within the last 3 years, within the last 2 years, within the last 5 years, whatever it is, honor those requirements. All right. Do not fudge. Do not ignore. If it says within the last 3 years, it has to be within the last 3 years. What if it doesn't say, and you have this issue? Well, this is where you kind of get to the point where I really need the whole picture. Okay, what was the example? Was it really so stupendous that I would say go back to 3 years? Does your resume make clear that you've had plenty of other accomplishments since then that perhaps were fed by this accomplishment from 3 years ago? So I think it's a little bit hard for me to give a general rule here without knowing the specifics of your situation, because those would be what would determine the answer. It's not a general one-size-fits-all kind of answer.
Got it. Well, Sally asked a question that I'm sure also a lot of people are wondering, and the basic question is, how do you balance humility without underselling yourself? Her example was that she had worked for a well-known tech company and was consistently ranked in the top 10% and promoted 4 levels in 5 years, even though the average promotion would be 1 in 3 years. So according to her resume, her title only changed 3 times, but how would she be able to get this information across without sounding like arrogant?
All right. That's an excellent question. I think that if you were to I'll tell you where arrogance is. Arrogance is, I'm great. Arrogance is, I'm wonderful. Arrogance is, I'm the best whatever in my company. That's arrogant. However, saying, I am consistently ranked in the top percent, I've been promoted 4 times in the last 5 years in a company where the average is 1 promotion in 3 years, that is information. That is context. That's just what happened. That's not your opinion about what happened. That actually reflects others' opinion of you. And I would strongly encourage you to include that somewhere in your application. I hope I'm making clear the difference between arrogance and simply stating the facts. Arrogance usually, and we also have a post, I think, on the blog about that too. But basically, arrogance is when you make declarative statements that are not about yourself, that are not backed up by facts. Arrogance would be, I am the only one who. Well, how on earth do you know that you're the only one who did whatever? You did whatever, but you don't know that other people have never done it. Arrogance would be, I am the best at. Well, there's a value judgment there, and again, that's not what we're talking about here. But simply stating facts, I am consistently ranked in the top 10%. I've been promoted 4 times in the last 5 years when the average is 1 promotion in 3 years. Those are facts, and those you are advised to relate, to recount in your application, and that's not arrogance. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, I definitely think that clarifies.
So Tina also has an interesting question.
I was going to say that was going to be my next question, Linda, because I think it borders.
Okay.
It overlaps exactly with what we're discussing. And Tina asks, when asked for hours of the week that you worked at a job, should we simply state 40 hours a week if it was a full-time job, or the realistic number? In other words, Tina was really working 60 hours, even though it was only a 40-hour work week.
I would list the 60. I mean, that's what you were working. And that's what, at this point, if you say you worked a 40-hour-a-week job, it almost sounds like a clerical position. Very few responsible positions allow one to work 40 hours a week at this point in time. So, no. If you work 60, report 60. But don't report 60 if you really work 50. Write the average number of work hours that you worked.
And that definitely makes a lot of sense, Linda. We definitely don't want to be underselling ourselves. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I thought maybe you went to look up a resource. So I was going to take, you're welcome, I was going to take screenshots. I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name. Next question.
Sure. So let me read that out one for everyone.
Okay.
So he asked, my main motto to do an MBA is a change in career. I've had about 3.5 years of work experience, and would a change in title horizontally, meaning to a different profile rather than the current one, be better than a vertical change in title? I'm afraid I'll be branded as a technical guy, and that might again, and then he would have to serve Let me just
in
clarify
the
that.
same industry. Yeah,
Right.
he'd have trouble. He'd get stuck in the same
Right.
niche, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, again, without knowing the particulars, it's a little bit difficult to comment. But in general, if you were to make a lateral move that would move you closer to your post-MBA goal or better prepare you for your post-MBA goal, that would be a good move in your long-term career planning, even if it's not literally a promotion, because it will make you more employable post-MBA. Very simple. It'll make your goal more plausible when you're applying to business school. It'll make it more achievable when you're in business school, and it'll make you more employable after business school. So I think that would be good. Now, would it be better than this vertical change in title? You know, that's kind of hard for me to say because I don't know the particulars. But clearly, from my response, you can see that something that moves you closer to your post-MBA goal would probably be my prejudice, my recommendation. Okay.
Right.
Any other questions? We have a quiet group. Come on.
Sure.
Maybe you guys need to do some jumping jacks. I don't know.
Well, Sachin has a question.
All right.
And he asks, what would be an implication of a part-time MBA versus a full-time MBA in regard to the career opportunities that you can get afterwards?
Another excellent question. That is something that you should look at really, really carefully when you're choosing where to apply. In general, not always, but in general, the full-time MBA program is better. The more dramatic of a career change that you want to make, the more likely a full-time MBA program is the better option for you. I'm not talking cost, and I'm not talking time. If you want to enhance your career, you basically want to stay in the same industry or the same, but perhaps you want to move more into management, then the part-time program becomes much more of an option because you can continue to gain work experience, to continue to grow on the job, even apply what you're learning in class to your job as you're learning it, and also not have to take off the time from work. So the part-time position is usually better for career enhancers, full-time for career changers. The other reason is that the part-timers sometimes have more limited access to career services, and you need to clarify that up front. I think at this point most schools give part-timers equal access to career services unless they're sponsored by their employer. Then they may not have. But you have to just clarify that up front at each school that you're applying to. In terms of the other thing about the part-time program as opposed to full-time program is usually the full-time program provides more networking opportunities. The part-time programs, because they're so intense, because they are part-time, because you don't have all the access to the extracurricular activities that are much more accessible when one is full-time on campus, the network is not quite as tight. Okay? We have some great, okay, some other great questions.
Yes, well, Anushri asks, what are some do's and don'ts for writing your resume? And I think, Linda, you have a new series about that, don't you?
Yeah, right. Maybe you can also post that online. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing I see, or the biggest mistake I see MBA applicants making in their resumes is that they simply use them to describe responsibilities. And they usually describe those responsibilities in general terms. The resume is for highlighting accomplishments, achievements. It's not just what you're supposed to do, it's what you've actually contributed and done. Where have you made a difference? And I know I'm kind of going back and over that one. Hit on that point a couple of times in this Q&A today. That is, I think, the biggest mistake people make in their resume. I'm a consultant. What's the bullet point? Consultant on projects. That is a complete and total waste. And don't laugh, I have actually seen it. What do you do? I'm an investment banker. What do you do? Financial modeling. That's obvious. Don't use bullet points in your resume to state the obvious. Use them to highlight significant responsibility, achievement, contribution. I did the deal sheet for merger and acquisition of X billion dollars. I don't know, whatever it is. I, modeled an investment that, had a return of 20% in the first year. Whatever it is, focus on achievement and accomplishment, not just description of responsibilities and routine tasks associated with your work. That would be my biggest tip for the resume. Second tip, I know this is very, very difficult, especially for international applicants who are used to CVs as opposed to the American-style resume. Resumes for people in their 20s should be one page. Oh, I know that hurts. It should be one page. Some schools are very nice. They let you go up to 2 pages. Okay, you can go up to 2 pages. But the 3- and 4-page CV that is common abroad is not the U.S. resume. And that's what if you're applying to American schools, that's what's being asked for. Schools specify 1 to 2 pages. They mean it. Make it readable, nice white space, bullet points, action verbs, etc.
Got it. Thank you, Linda. We have another question, actually, and this is a question actually about what we do, I guess our resume. So
yeah.
This is about accepted. So in terms of essay editing, so what is the process of working on, if an applicant wants to work on their essays with us, so how do we assess their essays, and what exactly do we do? Can you tell us?
All right. Well, we have different services. I'm assuming that you're now asking about the service that we provide, which we call review and editing for people with drafts. All right. We do have another service for people just starting out who don't yet have drafts, but that's a different question. So if you have a draft, we have a 2-step service. We call it review and editing. The first level is a content critique. We'll ask, do the essays complement each other? Do they answer the questions posed? Do they have a clear theme, a logical structure, an engaging opening, conclusion that concludes? Have they made good use of specifics, anecdotes, and examples to distinguish you from your competition, to support the main point of the essay, and obviously to answer the question? We'll provide feedback. You revise the essay to make sure that it accomplishes everything I just outlined, and you send it in again to your consultant. The consultant then goes through and corrects and edits it for grammar, clarity, style, spelling, word usage, the nitty-gritty details, and mechanics of writing. And this is $280 per hour. If you buy 5 hours at a time, you get a discount. If you buy 10 hours at a time, you get a bigger discount. And that's basically how we work. Our regular turnaround is 2 business days. We do also have a rush service, and if you're aiming for deadlines next week, that's probably what you would need. But that's the basis, in a nutshell, how we work with your essays. You're also welcome to obtain an estimate before purchasing. There's no charge for the estimate. If you go to that page, there's a banner there, obtain an essay estimate or ask a question, and you can just request an estimate there.
Got it. Thanks, Linda. We have a question here from Praja, and he asks, my university follows an absolute percent-based system instead of a GPA, which is followed by most U.S. universities. How do we explain this difference to the ADCOM, especially when the highest we ever received is 70 to 75%?
Right. Okay, that's a great question. I have to tell you, you're asking wonderful questions, all of you. It's a very common problem. If your school is well known, if you're applying from an IIT, an NIT, the better known universities in India or anywhere in the world for that matter, the American schools will have somebody on their staff that is very familiar with the grading systems in your location and can interpret the transcript and your grade. If you're coming from a university that is not terribly well known, then you should definitely provide context. And I would even say that if you're coming from a school that you believe is well known but perhaps aren't sure, then you should provide context. And the context should simply be that the valedictorian of my class, the person who got the top score in my class, had an average of 75%. Okay, that kind of context. Or I was in the top 10% of my class. Again, that's context, and that's context that's important for the admissions committee to know. So the last thing I wanted to say is on this point, and again, it's a really good question. If the school doesn't ask you to translate your percentage, don't translate it. Let them interpret it, perhaps providing the context that I just suggested about class ranking and the top percentage in your grade. Only have the grade, your grades translated by one of the, like by WES or ECE, which are the transcript evaluation services, if the school asks you to do so. If the school doesn't ask for it, don't do it. Let them do their own evaluation. You'll come out ahead.
Got it. Thanks, Linda. Krishna asks, if I was promoted recently, where should I highlight this? In the CV, essays, or should I ask my recommender to mention it?
You could ask your recommender to mention it, but realize that probably what you want your recommender to mention is not so much the promotion as much, well, it'll come out, but the reasons for the promotion. What did you do that earned you the promotion? And your resume or CV, if you got a promotion, presumably you're going to show your title up until, let's say you got the promotion in November. You were a grade whatever from date X to October 2013, and from November 2013 to present you are grade A, whatever it is. So your CV should show it, and it would definitely be noticed there. I think that's the best way. And again, I certainly don't think there's any harm in it. To the contrary, I would recommend that you at least consider asking your recommender to highlight whatever earned you that promotion. And you may, again, it's hard without knowing the full details, what you're going to include, what you're not going to include, whether you want to also go into this achievement elsewhere.
Excellent. Thank you, Linda. And Shriyad has more just a technical question. And he asks, this might sound naive, but is a cover letter required directed to the ADCOM when attaching the resume in the place provided in the B-School application form?
MIT Sloan, I think, still requires a cover letter, but other than that, no. That's the only school that I know of.
Excellent. Okay. In other words, follow the instructions that whatever the school says. Okay. Great. And a few applicants had asked in terms of obtaining scholarships. So, what can they do to maximize their chances of getting financial aid for a particular program? This is a very generic question, so I assume it's different per school. But would you have any suggestions, tips?
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, some schools have specific scholarships. So again, in terms of the specific guidelines set up by the individual schools, you have to look at those and follow those. That's number one. In general, if you want to, people who are awarded merit scholarships are the people who are going to make the school look good. How do you do that? You apply with above average qualifications for that school. So the school really wants you because you are going to make the school look good in terms of its averages, in terms of the people that it can brag about joining the program, and things like that. So an above average GPA and an above average GMAT, impressive work experience from brand name firms, perhaps multinational experience, these kinds of things are in general what's going to earn you a merit scholarship.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Well, here's an interesting question. What are the points that should not be missed when answering the goal essay or the why this school question more?
Yeah. I think in terms of the goals, I answered that, I said earlier, so I'm not going to go over it again.
Right.
In terms of why this school, that's, again, a great question. And the key here is to show how the school is going to help you achieve your goals. Because then the school will know two things, that you've really done your homework and you have good reasons for applying to the school and wanting to go to the school. And two, the school also know that it's going to have a happy customer at the end of the day that it can place and find a job for. So how do you show that it will help you achieve the goals? Well, clearly you have to, number one, you have to have clear goals. And two, you're going to show how the school, through its career placement opportunities, its curriculum, and its extracurricular opportunities and resources can help you do whatever it is that you want to do. So let's say, for example, that, and the fourth element would be any personal reasons that you would really want to go to the school. But the fourth, the personal, has to be is important, but only once you've shown them the first three. And it's valuable. For example, your spouse is living in the city. Okay, that's a very reasonable reason to want to go to a specific school. But you still have to show the first three. That alone will not do it. So the first three, again, are you want to go into high-tech product development. Well, you know, Stanford, Haas are great for that. There are others also, MIT Sloan, Duke, product development in general, product management, brand management, Kellogg. You know, so there's all, as long as you can show that that school has the career resources and your first job, you want to work for Google or Facebook, and you can see that those people actually actively recruit on campus, that's career resources. Two, curriculum. What especially the second year curriculum, or the more advanced parts of the curriculum will help you achieve your goals. What classes, what projects, if you're applying to Ross, how will the multidisciplinary action project help you achieve your goal? How will Stanford's customized curriculum help you achieve your goal? How do you intend to customize it? The same with Chicago with its very flexible curriculum. Why is the case method important to you if you're applying to Darden or Harvard? And then the extracurricular activities. What clubs are going to help you achieve your goal? What events are you going to want to get involved in? Are you going to want to get involved in a business plan competition? Are you going to, there's all different kinds. If you're interested in social entrepreneurship, are you going to get involved in net impact? How do you see yourself getting involved? What events would you like to help organize and put on? And those kinds of things, those are the kinds of things that will answer the why this school question. Obviously, it's going to be different for each individual. It's going to be different for each school. You can't take the answer you gave for Stanford and give it for Harvard. They are very different programs, despite the fact that they are so frequently lumped together. So that's how you would address the why the school question.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Now, John has a question that I'm going to tell you his question, and I think we're going to expand it also. So John asks, I did my undergrad in India and master's in the U.S., has a decent GPA, was an IT consultant for 3 years. Is my background good enough to be considered by the top 10 B schools? But I'm going to take that question a little bit further, Linda, and how should applicants be looking and weighing which school to apply to in terms of the rankings? Like, how should that fit in with their decisions of when they're evaluating schools and looking at their profile? How should the rankings fit in?
All right. Well, let's deal with John, and then I'll swing back to the rankings. Okay. And if I forget, remind me.
Okay.
John, first of all, you didn't include a GMAT score, so it's really hard to evaluate without a GMAT score. There's nothing in what you wrote that tells me you can't be considered by a top 10 B school. There's nothing that you wrote that would convince me that you could get into a top 10 B school. That's probably not what you wanted to hear, but that's the reality. So in terms of where should you apply and competitiveness at the top schools, we do have a special report, Best Business Schools for Me. Is that for you? Is that what's it called, Miriam? I don't remember what it's called. We changed the name somewhere along the way. But Miriam will put up the URL for it, and it goes into more detail. I'm going to go through it very quickly. First of all, in choosing a business school and trying to assess your competitiveness at business schools, you do have to look at academic stats. And by that I mean your GMAT score and your GPA. Now, you mentioned your master's GPA. You did not mention an undergraduate GPA. The undergraduate GPA will not be wiped out by your master's GPA, which certainly is a very good and competitive one. They're going to look at both. They're going to look at your GMAT. Those stats need to be competitive. 2, they're going to look at the quality of your work experience. You wrote that you were an IT consultant for 3 years. Again, have you had impact? Have you had responsibility? Have you made a difference for your clients? Have you advised them how to save money, how to increase revenue? Have you led a team under pressure with a tight deadline or a tight budget and successfully done so? Those are the kinds of things in terms of work experience that business schools are going to be looking for. And if you have done that, that will enhance your chances of acceptance in the top 10. If you haven't, it damages your chances of acceptance in the top 10. Then they're going to look also at extracurricular activities. Realize that business schools are firm believers that past behavior predicts future behavior. And they want people who are going to be active, engaged members of their community. Have you been an active, engaged member of your community? And community is a very fuzzy term. It can mean your geographic community. It can mean an ethnic community. It can mean a religious or political community. It can be a community of people defined by hobbies and non-professional interests. So have you been active in that sense? And they're also going to look at the personal qualities that you reveal through your CV, your essays, your interview, and your transcript even. Are you a person of initiative? Do you assume leadership roles? Or are you a card-carrying member of a bunch of different organizations where you really haven't contributed much of anything? Those are all differences, and they will also affect your ability to gain acceptance to a top 10 business school. And then the last thing that I've mentioned so many times is your goal appropriate for the schools you're applying to? The schools want to know they can help you succeed. And the MBA is a flexible degree, but it doesn't prepare you for everything. And there are other degrees that may be more appropriate. So the classic example I would give is if you want to be a physician, you need an MBA. No, you clearly don't need an MBA. It may enhance your medical practice if you have one, but it's not a requirement. If you want to be a lawyer, you need an MBA. No, you need a law degree. And again, it might be nice to combine the JD with the MBA, especially in fields like mergers and acquisitions, but there's a difference between nice to have and required. You have to make the connection that the MBA is a requirement for achievement of your particular goals.
Great. Well, Linda, I think we have time for one more question. Was there a specific question that you had wanted to address, or would you like me to just go ahead and choose the next one, the last one?
Yeah, why don't you choose the next one?
Sure. So I'm going to ask, Jian has a question, which was about a specific example that had happened to him, but again, I think I'm going to expand this one as well. Jian was about to get a promotion after outstanding work on a project for 10 months, and then he had to take a different international assignment and basically start from scratch. So for the next 2 years, everything just, I guess, appeared that he was in the same position, and his resume shows that as well. But the irony is that he really did outstanding work in both projects, but he doesn't have any promotion to back it up. So he asks, do you think I need to explain this in the additional essay or proactively talk about it in the interviews? So in this type of situation, and I'm sure lots of applicants have extenuating circumstances or different things that are just not covered in the application. So I think we did touch upon this as well, but when should they use the optional essay? When should they discuss it in their interview?
Right.
When should they just not mention it?
I think that the point, John, is that you have to make clear that you had significant responsibilities throughout these 3 years. And if they were different responsibilities and you showed impact on all 3 situations, all 3 projects, then you shouldn't. Again, it's more what you've accomplished than the title that's attached to your name. So if you've had significant responsibility in different places, then I wouldn't worry about it that much, as long as you can show contribution, impact, achievement.
Great. Well, Linda, thank you so much. I think we are just about out of time.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, well, really, it's been an excellent session, and thank you so much. For all the applicants who are here, there will be a recording of the session available. It should be up hopefully pretty soon this week. So we'll be sending you out an email letting you know when it's available. And as you leave, you will see a short survey. If you don't mind, as you leave the webinar, just take it. It takes about 1 minute. Just fill it out. We'd love to hear your feedback. And just wishing you best of luck with your application. So thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, just one other point for those of you who are still here. I realized I never did get to Miriam's question about rankings. I think it was based on John's earlier, and I want to just take a minute to address them. And the other thing is, if you do have additional questions, I'm going to go over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/accepted, and you can post questions there, and I will respond for the next 15 minutes or so. Getting back to the rankings are excellent sources of pure data on schools. And for that, I'm glad they're around. You can really quickly look up ROI at Forbes. You can look up average GMAT on Business Week or U.S. News, application. Well, there's all kinds of things you can look up very quickly and easily through the ranking. In terms of ranking the schools themselves, I think that's something that you individually have to do. And only after you're accepted, when you have multiple acceptances, at that point, yeah, go and look at the rankings, because they are reflections of brand and brand value. But I don't think that it's terribly useful for you in terms of filling out your applications or making decisions as to where to apply to look at the rankings as kind of this gospel that so many applicants view them as. So use the data that's in them, and then again, if you're in the happy situation of dealing with multiple acceptances, then layer in brand, which are best approximated by the rankings. Thank you again for coming. If you have additional questions, I'm going to head on over to Facebook.
Great. Thank you again, Linda. And thanks, everyone. Have a great day or night, wherever you're logging in from.